There are certain names in Ireland that you can't utter without being greeted with a look of disdain or disgust by those around you with thanks to their rather infamous relationships with our country and its bloody history. Here is a list of the top most disliked people in Ireland. Oliver Cromwell. Cromwell decided to use Ireland as his own killing field to advance his political career in Britain. Murdered and deported tens of thousands of Irish as slaves. He was a politician and soldier, widely regarded as one of the most important statesmen in English history. He came to prominence during the 1639 to 1653 Wars of the Three Kingdoms, first as a senior commander in the Parliamentarian Army and then as a politician. A leading advocate of the execution of Charles I in January 1649, which led to the establishment of the Protectorate, he ruled as Lord Protector from December 1653 until his death in September 1658. Cromwell nevertheless remains a controversial figure in both Britain and Ireland, due to his use of the military to first acquire, then retain political power, and the brutality of his 1649 Irish campaign. Cromwell is thought to have suffered from malaria and kidney stone disease. In 1658, he was struck by a sudden bout of malarial fever, and spurned the only known treatment, quinine, because it had been discovered by Catholic Jesuit missionaries. This was followed directly by illness symptomatic of a urinary or kidney complaint. The Venetian ambassador wrote regular dispatches to the Doge of Venice in which he included details of Cromwell's final illness, and he was suspicious of the rapidity of his death. The decline may have been hastened by the death of his daughter Elizabeth Claypole in August. He died at age 59 at Whitehall on September 3, 1658, the anniversary of his great victories at Dunbar and Worcester. Father Ivan Payne. Can any act be eviler than the betrayal of trust and authority perpetrated by an adult, especially an ordained priest, over vulnerable and ill children? This was exactly the evil which came to light when Father Ivan Payne, nicknamed in the media as Ivan the Terrible, was convicted by the Dublin Circuit Criminal Court on the 26th of January 1998 on 14 sample charges of sexually abusing 8 boys aged between 11 and 14. All boys were patients at Our Lady's Hospital for Sick Children, Cromwell, where Payne had held the position of hospital chaplain. Father Payne pleaded guilty to charges of indecent assault on 10 victims and in June of 1998 was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. He was released in October 2002. Payne moved to England in 2003. Captain William O'Shea. He decided to divorce Kitty O'Shea despite knowing it would bring down Charles Stewart Parnell, who was on the verge of achieving home rule. He was egged on by British interests to do so. Despite the fact that O'Shea and Kitty were separated when she met Parnell, the resulting Victorian-era scandal took down Ireland's uncrowned king. Born in Dublin, O'Shea was a captain in the 18th Hussars of the British Army. Around 1880, his wife, Essex-born Catherine O'Shea, entered into a relationship with the Irish nationalist leader Charles Stewart Parnell, with whom she had 3 children. O'Shea, who was already separated from his wife, knew of the relationship. In 1882, when the Liberal government was secretly negotiating with Parnell for the terms of his release from Kilmainham prison where he was being held on suspicion of treasonable practices, the president of the Board of Trade Joseph Chamberlain chose O'Shea as its intermediary, unaware of Parnell's affair with Mrs. O'Shea or of the fact that the newly born first child of their liaison was dying. O'Shea spent 6 hours negotiating with Parnell in the prison, extracting the surprising concession that Parnell would tacitly support the government after his release. It has been suggested that O'Shea won this concession, which reflected well on him, by threatening Parnell with public exposure of his affair with Mrs. O'Shea. Colin Whalen. Life was good for Martin Sweeney, living and working on the Mediterranean island of Majorca. He was building a new life for himself. He had been issued a Spanish national identity card and found a job working at the Squadron Bar in the resort of Portaportals. Life was good, that is, until July 2004, when he was recognized by some visiting Irish tourists as Colin Whalen, wanted by Irish Gardaí for the 2001 murder of his wife Mary Goff. Whalen had met Mary Goff in 1993. He was her first love and they continued a relationship until they married in September 2000. In June 2000, Whelan doubled the life insurance on both himself and on his soon-to-be wife. He stood to gain €400,000 in the event of her dying within 10 years. Whelan was a computer analyst with a bank, and a Garda trawl through his work computer revealed that soon after taking out the insurance policy, Whelan began searching out terms such as asphyxiation and lack of oxygen effects along with death by strangulation. Whelan had also downloaded the case notes for a strikingly similar murder case in the United States where a duvet had been used to keep the body warm and confused the time of death. Just 4 months into their marriage, Whelan had begun an online affair with an English woman and had arranged to meet her in March of 2001. During the course of their contact, Whelan had boasted as to how he was due to come into an inheritance in the very near future. On the 28th of February, Mary was dead. It initially appeared that she had fallen down the stairs at their home in Balbriggan, but an observant nurse had noticed some very slight scratches around her neck and informed the Gardaí. The state pathologist reported that she had died from asphyxiation, strangled to death with the belt of a dressing gown. Whelan was questioned and charged with her murder. A trial date was set for the 13th of October 2003. However, that trial never proceeded. 7 months before the supposed start date of the trial, Whelan's car and personal belongings were found abandoned at Howth Head in what was made to look like a suicide. A massive land and sea search was undertaken, but a body was never recovered. Nothing more was heard of Whelan until that observant Irish couple spotted him in Majorca. General Owen O Duffy. In the 1930s, he started the Blue Shirts, which was the Irish equivalent of the Nazis. He raised a brigade to fight with Franco in the Spanish Civil War and was an admirer of Hitler. His brigade raided the homes of Protestants for arms, increasing sectarian tensions. Armed Orangemen tit-for-tat killings occurred in reprisal for IRA casualties incurred during raids. His brigade began harassing of Protestant stores, burning delivery vans, raiding trains and sabotaging rail tracks. O Duffy became more ruthless in 1921, intensifying attacks on British forces and executions of suspected informers and other opponents of the IRA. When a Protestant trader named George Lester held up and searched 2 boys he suspected of being dispatch carriers for the IRA in February 1921, O Duffy ordered his death. Lester was shot but survived his injury. In retaliation, the B Specials invaded Rosslea on February 23 and sacked the Catholic part of the town. 1 month later, the IRA, commanded by O Duffy, raided the town in reprisal, burning 14 houses and killing 3 Protestants, 2 of them B Specials. Colonel Derrick Wilford. He was a parachute regiment commander in Derry in 1972 when he unleashed the Paras to fire on unarmed civilians on Bloody Sunday. 26 people were shot and 14 died. Wilford subsequently became known as the Butcher of the Bogside. He was awarded the OBE by Queen Elizabeth II, widely seen as a reward for his part in Bloody Sunday. The civil inquiry into the incident found that he had ignored orders, without justification, and in doing so had set in train the shootings. Seville suggested Wilford wanted to demonstrate the way to deal with rioters in Derry was not for soldiers to shelter behind barricades like, as he put it, Aunt Sally's while being stoned, as he perceived the local troops had been doing, but instead to go aggressively after rioters, as he and his soldiers had been doing in Belfast. He added, his failure to comply with his orders, instead setting in train the very thing his brigadier has prohibited him from doing, cannot be justified. Colonel Wilford should not have launched an incursion into the Bogside. Father Brendan Smyth. Brendan Smyth was probably Ireland's most notorious child molester. A Catholic priest from Belfast, he used his position in the church to contact, groom and molest up to 144 children. Smyth was convicted of 43 separate offences against 21 children in Northern Ireland for offences committed between 1964 and 1984, and a further 74 separate offences committed against another 20 children in the Republic of Ireland for offences committed there between 1967 and 1993. Smyth admitted on a number of occasions that he did not know how many children he had abused, saying that it could be hundreds. After his arrest in 1991, he fled to the Republic of Ireland, where he spent the next 3 years avoiding police and extradition proceedings. The poor handling of an extradition request from the RUC by the Irish Attorney General's office led to a further delay of Smyth's trial. This led to the collapse of the Fianna Fáil Labour Party coalition government in December. In 1994, Smyth eventually stood trial for his crimes and was sentenced to 12 years. He died in prison 1 month into his sentence. Brendan O'Donnell. Brendan O'Donnell was a disturbed young man. During the course of his trial for a brutal triple murder, he was described as a hebephrenic schizophrenic. The lawyer explained that in layman's terms, he was as mad as it was possible to be. On the 27th of April 1994, he evaded capture by police who wanted to question him on charges of stealing cars where he was living at a caravan site in Mount Shannon, County Clare. O'Donnell was known to sleep rough in the woods around his home at the nearby village of Whitegate. it was reported that he would often sleep on the grave of his mother who died when O'Donnell was 9. On the morning of April 29, O'Donnell arrived at Imelda Riney's door with a loaded shotgun, told her that he was going to raid the Whitegate post office and that she and her 3-year-old son Liam would come with him. O'Donnell then raped her. Although he claimed the sex was consensual, forensic tests would later detect signs of sexual assault. He then ordered her to drive towards Whitegate, where he ordered Imelda to turn off the road into the woods and get out of the car and walk deeper into the woods. Pointing a gun at her, he forced her to carry Liam. She stopped and lunged at the gun. O'Donnell shot her in the face, then approached the child and shot him too, watching his small body collapse on top of his mother. He was also responsible for the deaths of Father Joe Walsh, and Melda Riney. Fiona Sampson was relaxing in her parents' home. O'Donnell broke in and at gunpoint, he ordered her to drive him in the family car away from the East Clare area, which had numerous checkpoints. Sampson said O'Donnell told her if he had to shoot her, he would, and it would be quick. He asked her if she was afraid of dying. A few miles up the road, they met local farmer Eddie Cleary on the road, and O'Donnell attempted to force him at gunpoint to drive them away. Suddenly, Gardaí surrounded the car. Cleary managed to pull O'Donnell out of the car and Sampson was carried to safety. O'Donnell was handcuffed and arrested. O'Donnell's murder trial lasted 53 days, the longest in the history of the state, and O'Donnell was sentenced to life imprisonment. In 1997, O'Donnell was found dead at the Central Mental Hospital, having taken an apparent overdose of heart medication. Kieran Patrick Kelly. Nicknamed Nosy Kelly due to his large nose, Kieran Kelly may have killed up to 31 people. He was born in Rathdowney, Ireland, in 1930. At 18, he joined the British Army, but went AWOL and was dishonorably discharged. Settling in London, England, he fell on hard times and became homeless. Then, in 1983, Kelly was arrested for theft. However, he murdered his cellmate William Boyd, apparently because he was snoring. During questioning, Kelly confessed to having killed numerous other victims. Due to a lack of evidence, he was only sentenced to life in prison for slaying Boyd and homeless man Hector Fisher in 1975. We'll likely never know his true victim count, as he passed away in 2001. Alfred Taylor. In the late 19th century, Dublin-born Alfred Taylor fought as a mercenary, enforcing British colonial rule in Africa. He later served as a captain of the British Army in the Second Boer War. He embarked on a brutal campaign of ethnic cleansing, and has been described by historians as ruthless and sadistic. In 1901, he was accused of war crimes, including the murders of unarmed men and boys. Taylor was also suspected of killing witnesses. It was one of the first war crimes trials in British history, but he managed to dodge the charges, while some of the men under him were executed. That was our show for today. What do you think? Are there worse Irish criminals than the ones mentioned here? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe to my channel to stay informed. Also check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise in the links below. Until next time, this is Andrew in for Kevin Given saying live long and prosper, may the force be with you and keep reaching for the stars.